Hi, thank you so much, Hope. Thank you. Thank you, Stress Management Summit, for having me. Thank you, everyone who has joined. Thank you for making time to invest in yourself this evening. And I'm really super honored to be here. And it's an amazing work that you're doing, isn't it? Thank you for putting this together. And in the next 40 odd minutes or thereabout, I have a task. And the conversation we're having is parenting with sense and peace of mind. And I've been asked to have a conversation with us. And I like using the word conversation. I don't like using the word speaking because speaking to me looks like I'm speaking over your head. So I just really want us to have a conversation. So I'd like you to utilize the chat, and I'd like the moderators to pin the chat if possible. As they come in, right? So please utilize the chat. This is really going to be a conversation between both of us, a conversation, a reflection, and because when we do it together, then you leave you kind of anchor in the message, right? But when I talk over your head, I know that, I mean, especially as Nigerians, we're used to people shouting over our heads, but we're not kids, right? So I just believe in having back and forth conversation. So we're really going to have a conversations around practical ways to discipline, nurture, and stay sane while raising children in today's world, right? And this conversation is going to flow through. I'm going to start with one reality check that we have to make. Like, if you really want to parent with sense and peace of mind, right? Essentially, if you want to parent with less stress, right? If you want to parent strategically and if you want to parent with less stress, I'm going to walk us through one reality check that you want to have, two myths that you need to drop, right? Two, if you want to call it myths, if you want to call it perception, two myths that you really need to drop if you want to do that, and three things that matter most in that journey, and then four questions that you need to ask and answer honestly if you want to go through that. And through all of that, then we would have, the chats and the conversation and the strategies and the practical information. Essentially, when we talk about parenting, what comes to mind? Can you let me know in the chat what is your definition of parenting? So let me get a feel of what your definition or what your understanding of parenting is, so that we know that we are really, really, really on the same page. Because if you understand okay, let me not say the definition of parenting, what is the purpose of parenting? Right. So if we understand the purpose of parenting, then that drives how we do it. Or your understanding of the purpose of something will determine how you go about it or how you use it. Right. So when we talk about parenting, what is the purpose of parenting? Parenting means guidance. Thank you, Aliyu. What else? What is the purpose of parenting? So, just to save us time, right? When I think parenting means to train, grooming a child from cradle to adulthood, correct? Thank you so much. Thank you for keeping it coming. Thank you for keeping it interactive. So, when we talk about parenting, right? And if you want to do parenting with sense, we have to understand that parenting really means that a child has been brought into your care to take care of them, to nurture them, right? But in taking care of them and nurturing them, you have to come from a perspective of, understanding that that child in themselves have been created for something. So the child in front of you, the child in your living room now, running around, carries something inside of them that is their own purpose as well. So as a parent, the purpose of parenting is that by the time your child is leaving your home into the world, that you have aligned them as close as possible with a sense of understanding of themselves, of their purpose and of what they are here to do in the world, right? So the metrics for measuring your success in parenting is not what you have fed your child, is not how good looking they are, is not the certificates that they have. Those things are good, but the metrics for measuring success in parenting is how self aware your child is, how aligned they are to their purpose, how aligned they are to whom God has created them to be by the time they are leaving your house into the world or leaving your home into the world. And really, when we talk about the time they're leaving your home into the world, is really 18 years, because active parenting happens in 18 years. By the time your child is going into uni, most of them may not really come back home from uni, right? So when you understand that, it shapes how you show up to parenting. When you understand that this child in front of me, my goal is to help them fulfill their own purpose. And my goal is to give them the skills, the values, the confidence that they need to actually do the things that God would inspire them, do the things that God has put inside of them to do. Then that begins to shape how you show up, how you interact, the things you say, how you treat your child. So let me give you an exercise, something to ponder and something to think about. If an angel appeared to you right now and told you that the child that you have is going to be the president of your country, for example, would you still treat your child the way you treat them today? Would you still approach the relationship that you have with your child the way you approach it today? So I'm a Christian, so I'm going to use some examples from the Bible, right? For every remarkable person that was born in the Bible, there was a prophecy ahead of time of, what they were going to come into the world to do, and then how they ought to be raised, right? There was a prophecy for Samson, there was a prophecy for Jesus, there was a prophecy for John the Baptist. So it's the same thing with us. For the child that we have, if we pay attention and if we listen and if we're asking, God can show us, who they are and how we ought to raise them, right? So if God appeared to you today and told you that the child that is in your living room or in your home right now playing and watching TV or doing whatever is going to be the next president of your country, how would you treat them? If you have watched epic movies, for example, you see that when an heir is born, the moment an heir is born, every training, every protocol in their training is preparation for them to take the throne. So the parents are not going to say, oh, because they are still babies, because they're still 5 years, we're not going to treat them or we're not going to train them to understand the rules of the palace and how to be a king. The moment an heir is born, they are being trained for the throne, right? So it's the same way that the moment we understand that our children are not just ordinary, that they carried something inside of them that had been put there by God, then we show up to that parenting relationship, training them for that purpose. So you're parenting today for the future. You're not parenting today for now. So you're thinking, when you think like that about parenting, then you start to think about, how does this attitude, how does this thing I'm saying, how does this interaction with my child affect their future? Right? How does the interaction with my child affect, their future, affect how they think about themselves, affect how they show up to the world, and all of that. So one reality check that we need to have. Remember, I said we're going to go through one reality check, two myths to drop, three things that matter the most, and four questions that you need to ask, right? One reality to check we need to have in this process of parenting with sense and peace of mind is an understanding that we're not raising children for our world, that we're preparing them for their own world, right? So the world that you grew up in no longer exists. So it would be an error to continue to raise your children based on your understanding of, oh, how we grew up. When we grew up, we were not allowed to do this. We did this and we didn't do that. That is one of the sources of our stress most of the times, because you're not in touch. You're still parenting with old strategies when your children are in a new dispensation. In fact, the world that we're raising our children for is not even the world that we and them are living in today, because you know when the world that they're going to grow into has not yet come, right? So you need to know that you're raising your children for the future, right? um you're raising them for a world that you're not used to. So what that means is that you have to be a curious person. You don't have to be a closed up person, right? So that is a reality check, you know, for all of us. And then that brings us into the myths, right? Two myths that you need to drop. That parenting, good parenting, is a myth that good parenting means perfect children, right? Good parenting does not mean perfect children, and we can never really raise perfect children. And because we're chasing perfection, we're constantly under stress. So I was having a session with a young child who is 6 years old. And it was an online session, and she was there. The parent has set up the computer for her, and I was having this session because she's a black child being raised in a Nigerian child being raised in Canada, yeah. And she was being bullied in school, so she was having some self-esteem issues. And we're having that conversation, and she's a 6 years old. She was fiddling with the computer. She was, fidgeting. I could see that she's quite a kinesthetic learner. And the mom was very uneasy, kept on shouting, would you stay one place? Would you remove your hand from the computer? Can you listen? And I'm like, calm down. Nothing has spoiled. That drive for perfection, that drive for trying to look good, for trying to prove to everybody that you're doing the right thing. You're in a family gathering, and then your child does something, a normal thing that a child would do, a normal mistake, right? And then because you're thinking about what everybody will think about you, what everybody will think about your parenting, you're snapping at your child, you're cursing them, you're saying things that you're not supposed to say to your child, just because you want to look perfect to your family people, just because you don't want them to think that you're not raising your child well. Even the Bible that says, train up a child in a way that they should go. It did not say, train up a child in a way that they should go and they will not depart from it. It said, train up a child in a way that they should go, and when they are old. There's a reason that the Bible said, and when they are old, they will not depart from it, because there is a learning process that needs to happen. Everything you're teaching your child takes time to be installed. And when they are old, your words, your training, the values you're instilling in them is a seed that you're planting. And they may not be perfect, it may not look like it immediately. But when you stay consistent and you're constantly pouring those seeds and you're constantly, sowing those seeds, when they are old, when it is needed, your voice will come ringing and they will not depart from it. So, one myth that you need to let go and liberate yourself from is that your children will not be perfect, right? Your children will not be perfect, but keep doing what you're doing. You do, it looks like it's not working, you retrace your step, you keep doing, you keep sowing those seeds, you keep having those conversations, you keep having those instructions. The second myth that you need to let go of if you want to parent with sense and peace of mind is that discipline must be harsh to be effective. This one is a big one because we have been raised to believe that the only way to show that you are a disciplinarian is by withdrawing love, by being harsh, by being wicked, by inflicting pain. That is the only way that your mind tells you that you're actually disciplining your child, right? That's what we have been taught. It's not your fault. That is a conditioning. That is a conditioning because, you know, it's a subconscious behavior. You cannot do better than what has been poured into you. And that is why we had this is really why we have to become cycle breakers, because for it to end with us, we have to come to that level of awareness, and then we have to change how things are being done. There's a popular saying that I have within my community of parents, and I say, you can be firm and still be kind. So if my son, I have two children. Well, let's say I have two children. I have seven children, but I'm currently living with two, right? So if my son wants this phone and I don't want him to have the phone for whatever reason we decide, right? I don't have to shout. I don't have to raise my voice. I can tell him that you cannot have this phone. And I keep saying, I love you, baby, but no, you can't have the phone, right? I really love you. I really care about you. And I know you're sad that you cannot have the phone, but you cannot have the phone. If I have explained it to him, I've explained it to him. If I need to explain to him why he cannot have the phone, I'll take my time and explain it, right? But I don't really have to be aggressive about it. And this is a skill that we all need to learn. It didn't take I didn't arrive here in one day, right? It is a healing work because we also are coming from a generation of trauma, that beating, that hitting, that harshness, that aggressiveness that we were taught. It becomes our default response. Some of us even think that, if you're not beating children, you're doing something wrong, right? But do you really have to beat if you can talk, if you can teach? Because when you're aggressive, what happens is that your child's mind shifts away from the lesson that you're trying to teach them to the treatment that you're giving them. So if I'm trying to tell my child that, well, why I'm not giving you this phone is because I want you to learn delayed gratification, or because I think you have had too much screen, and too much screen is not good for you. That is what I'm trying to teach them. And if I'm kind and if I'm firm and if I keep insisting, they would eventually learn it. They will eventually know that they can't wear me out, and they would get the message. But when I then move from that to shouting and to spanking them, they immediately forget about the core message or whatever I'm trying to teach them. Then what I have done is that I've instilled fear in them, and I've made them to look at me like it is not fair, right? Because then it becomes about how you're treating them. So they don't even learn that lesson. It's either, well, they now do it in future because they are afraid of you, and depending on their age, they start to become resentful of you, right? Because they no longer are thinking about what you're trying to teach them. They're now focusing on how you are treating them and how poorly that you're treating them. We need to learn to give our children grace, right? And another thing we need to understand when it comes to discipline is that we don't have any moral justification to punish a child for something that we have not taken our time to teach them. Most times we're really um punishing children for something that we have not really sat down, talked to them about, taught them, taught them the skill, allowed learning to happen, right? So the process of discipline, like the root word is discipleship, training, teaching, right? Imbibing skills in your children, selling your values to your children. Like I tell people, I say parenting is like marketing. So you're in a world where you're battling for who sells most to your child. Right. So the world is trying to sell ideas to your children. Other people are trying to sell ideas to your children. You too, you're trying to sell your values to your children. You have to package it well and you have to sell it. Just the way you do your marketing for your business, you have to package it, you have to deliver it to your buyers, to your customers in a way that they will understand it, in a way that they would buy into it, and in a way that they become your influencers. So, what values are you trying to teach your children? How do you package it? How do you market it to them? If I asked you, for example, to write out the values you want to teach your children, some of you will say, I want to raise kind children. I want to raise children who are bold and confident. But every day you're shouting at your children. How are they supposed to be bold and confident? How are they supposed to be kind? You want to raise children who are bold and confident. Yeah, when your children ask you questions, you you see it as disrespectful. They're going to practice the boldness and confidence with you first before they practice it with any other person. So you get the point, right? So two myths. Good parenting means does not good parenting means perfect children. That's a myth. Discipline must be harsh to be effective. That's a myth. Discipline must not be harsh to be effective. Some of us don't hit, some of us don't shout, and yet our children are still good. Our children are still getting best behaved in school. Our children are still respectful, right? So that idea that you have been given that if you're not beating your child, they're gonna get spoiled is a myth. It's a myth. What you need to teach your children are values and principles that keep them guided, and you need to know how to teach them that. You need to stay consistently teaching them that, and you know, it will help them. What are the three things that matter the most? Number one is that you have to choose connection over control. Many of us want to be so much in control. And if you find out that you struggle to be in control, that is a trauma response because it just means that as a child, you were not given a voice, you were not allowed to have a voice, you were not allowed to express any form of control. So it puts you in a position where you are constantly wanting to control. And the easiest people to control are your children because they are tiny little human beings who don't really have much resistance, right? So you can't control your co-workers because that will lead to conflict. You can't control your spouse because that will lead to conflict. So where do you channel that energy, that trauma response? You channel it to the tiny little human beings in your home. So you want to control them. Do it because I said so. Don't ask me any question. Don't ask me why. Da 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 da, and all of that. If you really want to raise your children effectively, I tell people that one of the greatest parenting hack is connection, relationship with your children. Like I said, you will not raise a perfect children. I don't want to raise a child who doesn't make mistakes, right? I want to raise a child who because it is in making mistakes. Yes, we don't want our children to make mistakes that are irreversible, and that's why we are there to guide them, right? But I want to raise a child who, despite when they find themselves in the middle of a mess, that they can confidently pick up their phone and say, "I want to call my mom," because they know that regardless of what they have done, that mom is there for them, right? So I use an analogy of, for example, because that's the only way that you can save your children, you know, from some terrible mistakes. And I use an analogy of two young children who have told their parents that they're going for a class party, for example. So yeah, their parents give them teenagers, their parents give them the opportunity to go for that class party. And two of them get there and realize that the class party isn't really what they thought it was. So a classmate invites them for a birthday party, and they think it's an innocent party. And they get there. So one of them told the mom that they're going for a class party, and the other one told the mom that she's going to visit a friend, for example. And they get there, they realize this party is not what we think it is. People are taking drugs, boys are doing the things that they're not supposed to do. The teenager who has a good relationship with their mom will pick up their phone and say, "Mommy, please come and get me. This place is not safe." And the one who does not have a good relationship with their mom, right? And because they've already lied, would not call their mom. So she would probably say, "Okay, let me just wait it out until when it's time for the time I said I told my mom that I'll be back." And you don't know what will happen in that space just because they don't have that relationship to tell their mom, I'm actually in the wrong place. Please come and pick me up. So we don't want to raise perfect children. Yeah, we'll continue to guide them so they don't make mistakes that will mar them. But we want to raise children that regardless of what situation that they find themselves in, that they can come back to us. Right? So connection is the greatest parenting hack. What kind of relationship do you have with your children? Are your children comfortable around you? Are they sharing things with you? Are they open to you? And even if they're not sharing with you 100%, because yeah, they may not share with you 100% depending on the history of the relationship that you have had with them. Have you created an avenue where they are sharing with somebody that is reliable to provide support for them? So, for example, do you sign them up for mentoring programs? Do they have coaches, personal coaches that they can share with, and then those people can feed you back to know how best to support them and to know what's going on in their life, right? Do you have younger relatives and uncles and aunties that are aligned to your values that they can be close to share things with and stuff like that? So connection, very, very important. Values, the second thing that matters is values over perfection. Perfection is coming up again, right? Instead of trying to raise a perfect child, you want to raise a child who understands your value, who aligns with your value, and who lives with your values. So values are the core. Every teaching that you want to teach your child in your journey of parenting should be a value-based conversation. So, for example, you're telling your child, "I don't want you to have a boyfriend. Why won't I have a boyfriend? Nkechi is having a boyfriend." You have to have that conversation from a value point. "I don't want you to wear mufti to school. Why won't I wear mufti to school? Everybody is wearing mufti to school." Have a value based conversation. It saves you a lot of stress. And what value based conversation means is that from the beginning, that you have your family values outlined, that every member of your family, you can do this if your children are even as little as 4, 3, 4, as far as they can communicate. They know your values. In this family, we are kind. In this family, we um obey the rules, for example. So for example, the example I gave about wearing mufti to school, that has happened to me in real life, where for PE, my children are supposed to be wearing white canvas, and people, children then when we were still in Nigeria, young people always used to. It's my time up. Please go back. Young people used to wear, different colors of canvas and everything. My daughter came back to say, "Mommy, I want to wear my church canvas to school." I'm like, "Oh, you cannot wear your church canvas to school." It's like, "Oh, every other person is wearing their church canvas to school." And I'm like, "Well, you are not every other person. What is your name?" She says her name. I said, "Well, because your surname is Okoye, and because in our family we obey the rules, and because the school rules says that you wear white canvas to school, and Okoye obeys the rules, so you cannot do what every other person is doing." You see how that conversation goes, and it saves you that stress of, "Oh, mommy, you're not allowing me do what every other person is doing." The back and forth, it just saves you because we have earlier discussed what our values are. We have agreed on those values, and we know that because we are from this family, we live by these values. So it saves you if you have older children, it's even more important because when they start, oh, I want to have a boyfriend, I want to do this, I want to do that, you have a value-based conversation. So values over perfection. And then the final one, the final things that matter is an empty cup cannot share any substance. So whatever I have said up until now, isn't it? You're not allowing me finish. Whatever I have whatever I have said up until now, right? It takes you to implement. And for you to implement, you have to take care of you. So the shouting that you're struggling with is because you're stressed, you're overwhelmed more often than not. So if you're able, thank God you're in a stress management service, summit, sorry. If you're able to handle your own stress, if you're able to handle your own overwhelm, if you're able to organize your own self, right, then it's easier for you to meet the needs of your children. Because to be honest, they are demanding. Parenting is demanding, right? We cannot forget how I'm sounding, and I have my days as well. So parenting is demanding. So you must invest in taking self, in taking care of your mind, in having a sound mind, in pouring into yourself, in having yourself on your to-do list, right? In taking care of your emotions, in filling your own cup so that you can then show up for this, our little humans, our not so little humans, in a way with a calming presence and in a way that also meets their needs. Because at the end of the day, God is not going to ask you, oh, is it because you are overwhelmed? Is it because you are stressed? God is going to say, what have you done with the child I have put in your care? Were you able to lead them into the purpose for which I have brought them into the world? That is what God is going to ask you. And you're not going to have any excuse for that. There is really no excuse. It's your job, your everything. If you have decided to bring a child into the world, then you have to take care of them. I don't mix my word when I say that, right? So there is hustle, there's everything. There is always an excuse. If you're looking for excuse, oh well, but there is no excuse for not raising the child and for not aligning them to purpose. Right. So 4 questions before I go. Isn't it tormenting me on this screen? All right, 4 questions. I will just run through them, right? So 4 questions that I want us to really reflect. You can take this back and do it at your own time. Um, is really ask yourself, right? What kind of adult will I want to raise? And when I'm thinking about adult, I'm not thinking about it, 20, 30 years. I'm thinking, how old is your child? I'm thinking at 18. So if you have a 10 years old child, you have 8 years of active parenting, right? So what kind of adult do I want to raise? By the time my child is leaving my house at 18, I want you to have that, in your head. At 18, what are the values that I want to have instilled in them, right? What kind of human being do I want to see? How do I want them to treat me? How do I want them to treat people? How do I want them to treat themselves? What kind of relationship do I want them to have with God? Everything, whatever that matters to you based on your values, right? And then ask yourself, by the way I'm raising my child today, is it looking like we're headed to that place that you have written in question one? Right? So the way you're raising your child today, all the things that you have written that you want to see in your child by the time they become 18, is it looking like by the way you're raising them that you're actually going to arrive at that place by the time they're 18? Right? So be honest with yourself. Is either a yes or a no. So if it's a yes, fine. What do you need to build on? If it's a no, then what do you need to do? Right? What are the things you need to change? What are the strategies you need to change? Right? Who do I need to become to actually raise that kind of child in question one? Because it always points back to you, right? Who do you need to become to raise that kind of child? So I want to raise a kind child. I want to raise a child who is confident and bold. I want to raise a child who has a sense of purpose. If your child looks at you, are they seeing that? Is it going to help them become that kind of person by your character, by your interaction with them? Are you modeling that? Are you encouraging that? Then, final question: what skills do I need to build? What are the things I need to change in myself to become that kind of person that raises this kind of child? Right? I would have loved to for us to break it down, but isn't it? Yeah, no worries. So yeah. Someone says, "Oh, there are some questions. There are lots of questions." Mhm. All right. So someone said, "Can I get help from you, please? Can you share my Instagram or something so they can send me a DM?" So on Instagram it's Dr. Vivian Okoye. So Dr. Vivian Okoye on Instagram. Um, if you can share it. So if anybody wants to reach me directly for anything, then they can. Yeah. Then all right. All right. All right. All right. No worries at all. No worries. Yeah, I wish we had more time to talk. No, no. Yeah. All right. Thank you for having me. Yeah. Thank you so much for having me. Yeah.